Hi, I'm Leslie Bolt. One of the most common questions I get when teaching about responding to disruptive events is whatever happened to that 7-step model. Although it's important to us here at R3 that our consultants understand our 3-step approach, it's also important to be able to explain the why and how we got to this new model. Many of us were trained in critical incident response using what we called the Mitchel Model, developed by Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell and Dr. George Everly. Even though this model provided the foundation in much of the CIR work that was done historically, the passing of time has shown that this model is most effective for the population it was created for, first responders. Newer models have since been developed which take into consideration the unique needs of civilians who encounter the routine trauma first responders do much less frequently. The adaptations of the Mitchell model have worked to effectively address the discrepancies between what a critical incident may mean to a first responder versus what an event like this may mean to a civilian within the community. For anyone who has been trained in the Mitchell model, it is not difficult to adapt your skills to that of a more workplace-centric model focused on individuals in their workplace. Perhaps the most important reason for changing to a different approach is the recognition that there are a wide variety of events that happen that are not what we historically have thought about as critical incidents. The Mitchell model was designed for events that were clearly potentially traumatic for first responder personnel. These events frequently included death or significant injury to children, suicide of an officer, and a significant line of duty injury or death. While these can certainly happen, so too can many other types of events that, while less traumatic, are still disruptive. These include an unexpected death of a colleague due to a health event or an accident, the suicide of a colleague's family member, a robbery, or a death of a colleague's family member. This list is not exhaustive, but clearly illustrates examples of events that can disrupt a unit's functioning. The original Mitchell model included 7 steps or phases: introduction, fact, thought, reaction, symptom, teaching, and reentry, whereas the A.C.T. approach used at R3 only includes 3 phases: acknowledge, communicate, and transition. The first phase, acknowledge, is a very simple phase, yet one of the most important due to the critical nature of setting the appropriate tone and expectation for the entire intervention. In the acknowledge phase, the clinician recognizes not only the reality of the event, but also its powerfulness. Identifying the disruptive event clearly, as well as using the names of the victims involved, if there are victims involved, with compassion, can assist in establishing a much-needed and trusting relationship, as well as imply that we have the necessary strength to face the circumstance head-on. Reminding the group that those who have gone through similar events have reported coming together as coworkers, sharing in the event, turns out to be very beneficial. Here are some important tips for the acknowledge phase. This is the appropriate place to establish expectations and emphasize confidentiality. It is important to note that we do not identify ourselves as a counselor or a therapist. We are not doing therapy, and this title may have a negative connotation for those in our audience. Be sure to let the group know that their participation is completely voluntary and that they are not required to share. Now that the tone for the group has been set, it is appropriate to move to the next phase, communicate. The communicate phase of the A.C.T. model is similar to that of the acknowledge phase in that it continues to set the tone of compassion and professionalism. As a consultant, we play a vital role in not only conveying meaningful information, but also, and more importantly, modeling with our communication skills in order to create an environment that is calm, safe, and supportive. As Maya Angelou once stated, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Studies show that the healing process of those involved in a potentially disruptive event is expedited when they feel cared about and supported by others. When someone feels isolated and uncared for with a lack of support, it can impede their healing process and their ability to return to their former level of functioning. Our job as consultants is to not only normalize the responses of those affected by the incident, encourage their support of each other, as well as provide psychoeducational material that focuses on self-care and recovery. As a consultant, be sure to have the handouts to refer to when talking and to distribute afterwards. In smaller groups and one-on-ones, be sure to have handouts, but know that this is likely to be much more of a discussion format. In a larger group format, there may be a few questions, but there's overall much less opportunity to engage in two-way communication. Finally, the T of the A.C.T. model stands for transition, turning towards the future and the next steps, the what now. As a group, we know the reality of what happened, and we acknowledge the impact it's had on us. But the conversation does not end here. Transition means turning our focus onto the next, practical action steps for people in the next hour, the next day, or even the next week in order to ride the wave of this disruptive event without making matters worse, and hopefully to assist in returning to life and returning to work. This time spent addressing the small questions and putting into place action steps in order to move forward builds the momentum needed for human resiliency. The questions that come up most often include, what do I tell my kids? Am I ever going to get any sleep? Who do I and do I not talk to about this? What will it be like tomorrow at work? Do we have an EAP, and what do I do to access services? Although research has shown that nearly everyone after a potentially disruptive event will be okay in several days or weeks, it is our job as consultants to triage small questions that promote this return to a new normalcy. As we know, there may be a small number of individuals who require additional assistance, and in these cases, it is our job to provide them with the appropriate information regarding community and organizational resources where support may be found. Here are some important tips for the transition phase. Refer back to the handouts in order to alert individuals where to locate imperative self-care information, as they may not recall earlier discussion in regards to this. It may be helpful to actually assist an individual who needs more support in calling their EAP and scheduling a counseling appointment. In the rare situation where an individual appears to be in immediate danger or threatening violence is present, be sure to use good crisis leadership in taking appropriate steps for safety. So in short, the A.C.T. approach has been developed specifically to use with civilians in the workplace after a potentially disruptive event. It focuses on tapping into the person's natural resiliency skills, provides for additional understanding of common reactions that some of them may be having, and provides additional psychoeducational information for helping move beyond the event back to pre-incident functioning. Thanks for watching this edition of Inside Crisis.